Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 102 of DoubleDM podcast, where we talk about generosity, magic items, gold, rewards, everything along that line. But first, as every time before, we will recap our weeks we had since last episode, so you guys can catch up with us a bit and see how we are doing, right? A little bit of personal space. No, but we are here to recap our weeks, what happened in our TTRPGs this week, or what we are looking forward to in the future, and just set the tone for a very friendly discussion. So, Niels, how are you doing today?
I am doing really well. I had an amazing TTRPG session and got very far with my application. I was very productive and can't really complain. The weather is great right now.
Your application for what?
I'm applying for a new job, or trying to. I'm writing the application for that right now. And it's a process.
What kind of job are you going for?
For basically a working student job in a chemistry firm.
Ooh, nice.
That's what I'm trying to get into anyways. And yeah.
I mean, there probably is enough student jobs in chemistry labs, right?
Yeah, probably. But it's an initiative application. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't a job signing or anything. I just thought, why the fuck not? And yeah, the last time I wrote an application, it was, I think, 6 years ago. So it's been a while and it takes some time, but I got together with my father and wrote a bit of that and some tips on how I can write this to fit the application that I want to write.
Yeah.
And then improve on that from week to week.
I need to ask you something.
Yes.
Are you putting TTRPGs, podcasting on your resume?
Hell yeah, I am. Of course I am.
Because I have for mine.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also am applying for a new job. It's very fun because, right, as, for example, a Gen Z person applying for a job into a big firm like I am, I also put social media work on my resume because I have done that for 2 years. I know how to look at social media. I know how to analyze trends. I know how to find out what works, what doesn't. And I know how to analyze a fan base, more or less. I've done that. I know how that works. And I think that that's a good thing because I think most of these companies do not have many people that actually know how social media works.
Hell yeah.
And that's a new skill that probably, to anyone listening, you are probably on social media as well. If you use that correctly, that is something that you can and should put on your CV because not many people know how that actually works. They just use it to catch up with their friends. But if you're actually interacting with a community and understand how the community works, that's a skill that many people lack.
Yeah, and
that is very helpful in getting hired.
Oh yeah. And TTRPGs in general provide that a lot because playing TTRPGs can link into so many soft skills that are necessary in the modern day world at workplaces, like good communication skills, good writing and planning skills. It's all coded into TTRPGs. Yeah. You might have to find a way to fit the way you describe it into the job, but it should definitely be on there somewhere.
I mean, the easiest way that I can say it is, I've done a project management class. I've passed that. And I've talked with my professor a lot in that class. And I told him that I play TTRPGs and that they are very good form of team management, team communication, general communication skills, and presentation skills as well. And he was like, yeah, you're completely fucking right. And when my project management professor says that TTRPGs are a good skill to have if you go into a job where you have to work with a team, where you have to manage something, where you have to communicate with others, you need to put that on your resume. You probably don't have to say, I play pen and paper role-playing games every Thursday night, but you can say, I do something in my free time that is a pen and paper role-play, and that teaches me a lot of communication skills, a lot of management skills, and a lot of openness towards creative solutions, for example. It allows me to be open with other people. It allows me to work with a lot of different people together to solve a problem together. That is something every company wants.
Yeah, or just quick problem solving and quick thinking in general.
TTRPGs are team building exercises. So if you're applying for a management position, just say, well, I can run some TTRPGs for your workers and we will see if that works for them. Heck yeah. You get to play on your job. You get paid to play now.
Amazing.
Okay. CVs aside, resumes aside, what did happen for TTRPGs for you this week?
I had an amazing session on Tuesday. And in that, my players left the city they were in currently, finished finished up followed up on some rumors they heard, investigated a long gone house, basically, and found a trapdoor that led down to something.
Yeah.
But they couldn't quite cut the lock check on that because it was magically locked from the inside. Because there was, I can't tell too much yet because I know my players are listening, but there was someone digging for an artifact that they then found at some point. They somehow got through that lock, and this person was hired to get this artifact.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to lock himself into the door, or into this basement area. And as they found them, the person that was looking for the artifact was dead, clutching the artifact in hand. But anyways, my players just took it, as per usual. They took the artifact, they took the letter that employed this person. Yeah, now they have this ancient dragon artifact that needs to be delivered to the advisor of the king, basically, for a sum of 5,000 gold pieces as a delivery fee. And then proceeded to go northwest, still in the underground, to follow up on another rumor that they heard, or actually have concrete evidence that there is a vampire clan somewhere that have taken captive the grandfather of one of my player characters and a long gone friend of one of the others. And now they are on the track towards that clan ground, you could say. And on the way there, they encountered a special kind of werewolf that bit one of the other players and turned him into a half werewolf Lycan, Order of the Lycan Blood Hunter kind of deal. And this werewolf then initiated a combat where it was really close, but the Lycan character lost the ability to differentiate between foe and friend and was just in a frenzy, attacking anything right around them. And it was really close to getting everyone killed, including the Lycan player. But it was an amazing story moment because the other party, after defeating the rest of the small little werewolves, trying to calm down this player was just insanely well done. I loved it from the beginning. And was there for everything. It was just amazing. And let's see where it leads next week.
Interesting.
But that's my TTRPG week. Anything for you?
Tuesday, we played Tyranny of Dragons. My players had finally reached the end of the dungeon and found the White Worm Speaker, Varam the White, one of the 5 cultist leaders of the Cult of the Dragon Queen. And they paid the price for him. Literally, they put on 3,000 gold pieces for the snake matriarch that had held him captive. And then she released him and let the players go. And my players brought him back to Waterdeep to now be interrogated in front of the entire council of Waterdeep, go against the Dragon Cult. And that's going to be interesting. That's going to happen next time we play, which is a little bit of time away because we will skip one time we play in 2 weeks on the 21st because exams are right in that week for everyone in the group. So we're going to say, let's take a break that week and just play at a different date. And
all right.
That is where it's at. And it was mostly a travel session. My players had a few talks with this dwarf. They had to face a few problems on the way while they were carrying a dwarf that was tied up, let's say, extremely, right? They put a potato sack over his head and basically made him into only rope. They bound him from head to toe with rope and put a potato sack over his head. So there were a few questions by travelers along the road and merchants because that does not look good or legal. So my players were then found a better way to restrain him and then brought him back to Waterdeep and talked to the council that was there at the moment and asked them to call in a full session to talk about this dwarven worm speaker. And we will see how they will interrogate him and what they will get out of him. In the book, it says that most of that he will basically tell them everything, right? I'm gonna play him a little bit reluctant to tell them everything, but he's gonna tell them everything because he knows that he can't go back to the cult. He will be killed for what he did, but he can obviously reluctantly tell the players everything he knows for a price. And we will see how that goes.
Alrighty.
And I will see I want to see what my players do with the information because players are currently level 11 now. And let's just say that they plan to, as soon as they know the location of the Well of Dragons, which is the place for the final encounter with Tiamat, they want to go there.
Oh boy.
And basically, what I'm going to do, I'm going to say this right now, that region is too high level for them. If they want to go into a region where an ancient red dragon will fly overhead and kill them if he wants to, my players will have to deal with that. It is their decision, and I am gonna play the region how it is depicted in the book. And since dragons are gathering at that region now, there will be dragon patrols. There will be a desolate wasteland, villages burned to the ground. If my players want to go there, they can. But if they do and have to flee, that is gonna have implications.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna play out that how it is. There is ancient red dragon patrols around the area. If one of them sees my players, he is gonna kill them because he wants to.
Yeah, just dealing with the consequences of your own actions then.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to hear more about this. This sounds interesting.
I can't wait to play it.
Understandably so.
Yeah, and with that, I don't think I have anything else to talk about. You don't have anything else to talk about, right? Then let's jump right into episode 102 of DoubleDM podcast, where we will talk about generosity and how much magic items you should hand out. Hey listener, how are you enjoying the show so far? Tell us about it in whatever way you see fit. Go to our social media pages and add us or DM us about your favorite episode of the show. We would love to hear from you on what impact our show might have had on your home games. Or you could review us on your podcast app of choice and leave us a nice message with a 5-star review. And if you want to go above and beyond, bring a friend into the fold. Tell them about our show and refer us to them so they can get a piece of the pie as well. Thank you for listening to DoubleDM and joining us on this incredible journey. So, Niels, I've been on Twitter recently, as I obviously do, right? I have nothing better in my life to do. And I saw a post from Mappy, Maps and Quest, Eric, wonderful person. If you are not following him on Twitter, go do that now, dear listener. But Mappy made a tweet that said, I hand out my magic items like candy on Halloween. Now, this is a joke. It's a funny meme joke. But it did imply a few things for me. And I want to say this, right? Normally, I wouldn't be necessarily the person to interpret too much into such a tweet because there's not much to interpret. I firmly believe that Mappy's players do not have to say trick or treat before they get a magic item. But this still sparked an idea for a discussion in my head. And that was a discussion about item generosity. How often should you hand out magic items? What happens if you hand out too many or too few magic items? And generally, how should you work with magic items in your setting from a world building standpoint, from a game perspective, from a rewarding perspective? I'm not here to talk about how to create these magic items. I still want to do that at some point, but right now I just want to talk about how can I hand out magic items in the proper way? So let me ask you, how do I hand out magic items the proper way?
Well, I think this isn't easily answered with just one sentence because there's a plethora of different ways to approach this, depending on I know you hate this, but depending on the style of campaign you have.
I thought of a joke in my head that I now have to do because started the sentence, but you said I can't answer it in one sentence, and I want to say then take two, which is nimm zwei in German. And Niels pulls out a nimm zwei bag. Let's fucking go. Sorry, Please continue.
No, I think it heavily depends on the style of campaign you're having and the style of game, the system, and all of that. Yeah. Because if you want a very high magic fantasy setting with very powerful NPCs and very powerful enemies, it's okay to hand out many magical items. But if you want a more grittier, more realistic, less powerful but still brutal campaign, you probably should hand out less magic items than normal, or whatever you define as normal. This completely depends on the way you want to approach the situation and the campaign as a whole or the specific arc or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to think about what items you want to give to your players. If they should be permanent items or consumables, one-time use only, or multiple uses, or somewhat restricted in a specific way. There are a bunch of things to think about when you want to hand out magic items. If it's okay, in quotation marks, to hand it out right now, or should it be later, or whatever else there is, right?
I mean, yeah, totally, right? So many different factors play into that decision that GMs make every single time they hand out a magic item. Should I hand it now? Should I hand it later? What should this item even do? Why should I hand it out? Why is this item being handed out at this specific point, right? In a dungeon? Mm-hmm. Why is this item here? All of these questions is something that you need to ask yourself. And as a GM, you obviously ask yourself these questions organically anyway when you arrive at the conclusion, I should hand out this magic item as a reward. Or I should give them this magic item. Or I should make this available to them for them to buy with money. Money is a whole different problem. And economy in D&D and any TTRPG really is something that is so often, so heavily broken.
Mm-hmm.
Because none of us, or the few of us, have any degrees in actual understandings of economics.
Yeah.
There's so much that just goes wrong when you think about money too much in your D&D games, so that I advise you to just not think about it too much.
Yeah, when you want to have that sort of money generosity, you could say, let your players walk around with gross domestic incomes of small countries in their back pocket and don't give it a second thought. Yeah, they could buy the whole country, so who cares? Are they doing it? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows, right?
It's always just a question of, does this really matter to us in play?
Exactly.
And try to make sure to adjust the money that my players get and somewhat the economy in the game so that they've never felt too rich, but always, or most of the time, rich enough to buy the stuff they want. But there are decisions. Money is a good resource players can use. So if they have too much of it, that resource, that kind of switch or lever or scale in your game disappears.
Yeah,
I can give my players 1,000 gold pieces, and then I give them 2 magic items, each costing 600 gold pieces, and that means just they have to decide which of the 2 they want right now. And then they can come back with more money later to buy the other one. But this is a decision that is only able to be made because the players have less than 1,200 gold pieces.
Yeah.
If they had that much, that decision would fall off the table if they want both items.
Mm-hmm. What I try to do in this regard is give my players enough money to not think about if they want to sleep in a inn or just outside the city in the woods, so they can have, or they don't have to worry about getting through the day with enough food, water, or whatever, but still have to think about where to invest their money best. Do they want a new magic item? Do they want new potions? Do they invest in a caravan to escort them to wherever, or their goods to wherever, or whatever these big spendings are? They have to decide on the big ones, not on the small ones, because this is then just for most of my games, this then just becomes tedious. And if I want a more brutal or realistic way of travel where they have to hunt for their food or whatever, I usually don't use D&D in that because the system just isn't made for that.
Yeah, I just feel like money is a resource, right?
Yeah.
And with resources, if you have too much of it, it doesn't matter. If you have too little of it or none of it, it's a problem. And when it comes to D&D, I don't want my players to have too much of any resource or too little of any resource or none of that resource, because that would just mean both sides create entirely different problems that we don't want to necessarily deal with, right? If my players have too many arrows, they don't have to track arrows because they have too many of them. If they have no arrows, the archer's gonna feel bad. So how many arrows should my players have? Well, how many ever they want to have. But if you give your players a bag of holding that holds 500,000 arrows, I can assure you that your players will never track the amount of arrows they use from that bag of holding because they just believe that just lasts them the whole campaign because it is basically an unlimited amount of arrows. But if they have none, that just means that the archer or the archer concept falls away for that player. They now have to go into melee because, well, they have no way of shooting at a distance, even though they wanted to use their bow and arrow. And I know this is an arbitrary example, but I can also go with gold. If I have too much gold, they will not track their gold anymore. Or they will track it, but they will not care for their gold. They will just spend it because they have enough. That can be fun. Same goes with they have no money at all. Both can be fun. Oftentimes, I like the games where I play in and that I GM to be in that mid-range of they have money to buy the stuff they need, but they don't have enough money to to get everything. At least not in the beginning. When they are level 19 and 20, they're equipped to the max anyway. Then I can just give them 10,000 gold pieces in a box because they will not care for these 10,000 gold pieces because they can't do anything with them. But exactly that's the problem. If that happens in the middle of your game, they suddenly have too much money to care for money. And you don't want that.
Yeah. And another thing regarding that is in the later games, in the later stages, you don't really have a difficulty motivating your players to do a certain quest because they are heavily invested in the story anyways, usually. But especially in the beginning, in the first or second quest, money can be a good motivator for your party because when you start out adventuring a very dangerous but profitable profession, they want to have enough money so they can live their lives. And then and get entangled into the story and want to save the world or whatever you want. You guys decided on beforehand.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, you don't have shit. And then giving them enough money or the resources they want or motivates their characters is a good way to motivate their characters to do the things that drive the story forward, whatever this may be.
This is not necessarily what people consider as generosity, but putting a money amount on the first or second quest is still some kind of generosity from you as a GM. How much money am I willing to give my players in the beginning of the game? Or how much rewards should I give my players in the beginning of the game? That's the kind of generosity. That's GM generosity. You as a GM think about this. I want my players to have some sizable amount of money. There are 5 players. I'm going to say each of them gets 50 gold pieces. That's 250 gold pieces. And now you have to think about what 250 gold pieces actually are. Who pays that? Because if a players get hired by a town and the town says we are able to pay 250 gold pieces, that means that they have at least 250 gold pieces lying around somewhere that they do not need for their basic economy to work, that they can use to pay adventurers to do the stuff they want. And 250, now that means what is 250 gold pieces? You've set a precedent in that instant for the amount of money that this town has on hand to pay adventurers. Yeah. If the next quest from the same town or the same guy only brings 50 gold pieces for the whole group, that's a disparity that needs to be talked about, or that needs to be thought about at least. Why was the first quest able to be paid so much and this next quest so little? What changed?
Yeah, I think one way you can handle this specific thing would be like in the Witcher game, when one big thing is threatening the well-being of everyone in the village, like a big monster in The Witcher. The whole village puts together everything they can scrape together to pay a Witcher to deal with that.
Yeah, but that still is a problem.
Yeah, most definitely.
Because the fact that they do that is okay. I understand why they do it. But imagine this. Someone knocks at your door. You're a villager. You make 5 copper pieces a week. Someone knocks at your door and says, we need 5 gold pieces from you to pay the Witcher that is going to kill the monster that's been plaguing our fields. And you have exactly 5 gold pieces on hand. That would be everything you've accrued in the last 5 years of living here as extra money. That's all the money you do not need. That's as if I would come to you, Niels, and say, well, PayPal me everything that is in your bank account except this month's rent, internet pay, water and electricity bills, everything that you do not need for this month's bills. I can tell you that nearly none of us would do that.
Yeah, most definitely not.
And then that means, while maybe in this village, obviously, the threat may be higher and some might still do it. And yeah, probably you might give some money away. But when you have this village of 200 people and each of them puts in a gold coin, that's 200 gold pieces. But that still means that there are 200 gold pieces lying around in this town. That still has an implication. That means this town is at least 200 gold pieces rich. I'm not necessarily here to discuss and calculate the net worth of this town in your D&D economy. But if a town pays 200 gold pieces for a party to kill the nearby wyvern to rescue their farm animals, that means that these people make enough money to save up 200 gold pieces for only this.
Yeah.
That is an implication. That is the generosity you need to think about, or you don't need to think about. Because what we just did was ask that question that we just told you before to never really ask. Just find a good amount for your players. Don't look at, do look at these lists online, how much money you should give out a level 5 party for a quest or something. Do that. Look at those lists. But make up your own mind. How much money do I want these PC to have? Do I want them to have a lot of money? Then hand out more money than these lists say. Do I want them to have a little bit of money and think about equipment that they need to buy? Hand out less money. Money is just one of these things. And now I want to go to something different because money is a lot of numbers. And those numbers can get tricky to discuss real quick, as you kind of saw with this discussion, right? 200 gold pieces. How much is that exactly? Because no one knows how much 200 gold pieces would actually be in these worlds, because the economies of every TTRPG I've looked at are completely fucking busted.
Yeah. In general, math beyond the party radius is completely just not working properly.
No one wants to think about it. No one does. So let's go to something different. Generosity with other rewards. How generous should you be? I mean, I know I asked you this before. How generous should you be? How is the proper way to be generous? And you said you can't answer this easily. But I'm going to ask you this question once again, a little bit differently this time. Niels, if your players go on a quest, they're, I don't know, something along the lines of level 5 to 6, 7, something along these lower ranges of level. Not very low level, but lower ranges. Tier 2 adventures, basically.
Yeah.
What would be an appropriate reward in your games?
Okay, I would say maybe a rather, or for example, a rare or higher, a very rare or very rare consumable, one-time use, or a common to uncommon permanent magic item, for example.
Yeah.
So if you want, I think about the amount of uses my party can get out of this specific magic item to see if it is in a good range for my party.
Okay.
So if my players don't have access to level 3 spell slots yet, or just got access to level 3 spell slots if we're talking D&D, I may put a level 4 spell scroll in there. That is just one-time use, or if they don't want to use it and keep it for their wizard to later copy it in his spellbook, they can do that. But it's still a one-time use. You have it, you use it either by copying it or by burning it and then using the spell, and it's gone. For that level, I think it's okay. Or a more common magic item that hasn't that much of an impact, but therefore they can use it multiple times through a long rest, through a week, or whenever their charges recharge, or if they have charges.
Now let me ask another question. Why do you think that is the appropriate reward?
It just comes down in my games to the vibe that we wanted to go with. Yeah. That is usually being powerful, but still having a challenge. And this method, in quotation marks method, proved good in that regard, with them giving enough power to face smaller enemies or lower level enemies or whatever, but still have a challenge against the big ones. It's just it proved through trial and error.
I mean, it does for everything, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes you give too much and realize, oh my god, my players have too much magic items, are totally overpowered and beat every one of my encounters. And sometimes it's like, maybe I should have given them a magic item to make them a little bit more powerful against these enemies.
Yeah, but especially with the first point, I think as a GM, you can more easily change the direction of the game in a way that you want, that you all want it to go again. Because you can, as a GM, you have a lot of tools to up the ante or bring out bigger monsters, scarier monsters, more powerful enemies in general. There isn't a good way or a lot of good ways to lower the power level of the party, but you can always up the power level of the enemies. So I think giving out too many magic items is still can still pose a problem, but is more easily adjustable to the vibe that you want to go with.
I actually think that both are very easily adjustable to the vibe you want to go with, because you're the GM. I'm gonna say this like it is. It is not hard to take away a magic item if you really want to. It is not hard to take away a magic item if you want to. Obviously, we can do it right and we can do it wrong. Just taking it by force, if there is some more dramatic power behind it, right? Your fighter has a magic fire sword and they fight a troll, and the troll realizes that this fire is hurting him, and he takes the magic rapier and breaks it in half because it does aura to me. That is cooler than, oh yeah, you lose it. Because I say so. Yeah. We all know why that is more cool. And we all know that the troll thing and that the really dramatic taking away of that magic item or of that power is going to drive the player to either get that thing back, get something better even, or just in that moment have this become a more personal matter for them. This troll has broken in half his long sword of fire or his fire tongue sword, and now he's really angry and takes out a second sword and now slashes against the troll in more anger and rage because this was a prized possession by your father or whatever.
Yeah, in general, I think having a reasoning behind why you give out magic items or take away magic items is a good way to go, if not the way to go, because it immerses everyone at the table to the situation and drives your players towards something. Either getting the magic item back or getting the magic item in the first place, or trying to figure out what this magic item is for if it is not known and no one can cast Identify, for example. You don't know what this magic item does, you have to find out. Or whatever else. Having a reasoning why it is where it is or why it isn't where it isn't.
Yeah, but the thing is that I still want to talk about a bit this, about the either overloading or underloading your players with magic items or with powers, even more general. With an anti-meta rifle when you play in a sci-fi game, or with smart grenades that are flying missile-launched grenades or something, right? Guided missiles, blah, 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 blah. Anything, really. I think GMs fall into the hole of, I give my players too many magic items way more often than the I give my players too few magic items hole.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we can see this. Mappy's tweet has a lot of people agreeing with him. And I'm gonna say this. This is not bad. Because I think the reason why we give out many magic items is because we want our players to feel powerful. We want them to feel like gods at the end, maybe. We want them to be able to slay dragons, to best the villain, to save the realm. Magic items make them stronger, so yeah, obviously we give them those. And also, it just feels good to see your players happy with the magic item that they got. Especially if you ask them, what kind of magic item do you want for your character? And then you give them something exactly like they described to you. Obviously, you want to see your friends and players happy. But I also think that we give out many magic items because we want to see our players do more stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, who hasn't given out a magic item that has some kind of mini mechanic to it that changes the approach of the game, or the style of combat this player approaches, or the way this player approaches challenges?
Oh, yeah.
And we only do that because the base class system doesn't give them enough abilities for us. And this is a completely different view of it, in my opinion. Looking at it this way means that we think the game could do more, and it doesn't. And that's just an approach for me that I find very interesting now, because D&D is a power fantasy, but it's not power fantasy enough for us. All of a sudden, if we give our players magic items that are not just a +1 sword, but you can suddenly, as a fighter, cast spells with this sword. It wasn't enough of a power fantasy for us, so we gave our fighter magic abilities with the sword that he holds.
Yeah, what I like to do when I try to give out magic items is either completely drive into the way that my that the class or whatever they have in that system goes anyways. So just amplifying the abilities that you already have, or adding stuff that isn't necessarily part of your class to begin with. These two ways are the ones that I usually go with.
But this really means that we want the game to do more. And I feel like that is nearly the same in every game for me. That means we just want our players or the characters to do more stuff. We want there to be more to the game that there is on the baseline level. And I think for me, in many games, that's kind of the same for me. I look at the base game and I feel like this is great. I love it, but I want there to be more. The same goes when you play a Powered by the Apocalypse game and give your players custom moves. That is also you wanting your players to do more than the base game provides them with.
Yeah.
Let me reiterate, this is not a bad thing, but it's a thing you need to think about. Because if we look at balance, and I know we've said this so many times before, we hate to talk about balance. Now we need to. This is not part of the balance. Your custom magic item, your special extra move in Powered by the Apocalypse, your whatever, your new feat in D&D is not part of the balance of the game. So as soon as you give out something special, something new, something different, you throw out balance completely, because no balance calculations will ever make sense again, because they cannot account for your fighter suddenly being able to cast 3 different fire spells with their sword each day.
Yeah.
That is not accounted for in the balance. You need to do your own calculations for that. Or better yet, you don't need to do any calculations of your own for that. But you need to think about this when you hand out this item, that handing out this item means you're gonna make this fighter substantially stronger and different from any other fighter along the way.
And I think this is exactly the point why I usually try to give out special items, not just to make the fighter stronger, because that happens naturally anyways, but making him different and unique and one of a kind. There probably will never be a fighter that is just like the fighter I just gave the custom magic item to.
Yeah.
Because it's a way for you to make them stand out.
Exactly.
And create a way for them to approach tasks or challenges differently. This is something that I really love, that just giving my players a magic item that isn't necessarily combat focused, but can completely alter the way they approach a completely non-combat based challenge or task.
I'm gonna say this how it is. That is exactly what I want from every game. I want the players to stand out. I don't want them to necessarily be heroes and save the day every time, but I want them to always feel like they can make an impact. And making an impact comes with being special. This comes with being different from the normal NPCs in the game, or special NPCs in the game even, and every other player character. And I think it's fun to see, because I've just thought of a discussion I've seen around, right? It sounds so weird for me to say this, but this is something D&D is so fucking bad at. Every single fighter, no matter how hard you try, is gonna feel baseline the same, because they have a single class that has some abilities that never change, and they always feel the same. The extra attack always feels the same. Sure, if you pick a champion fighter, your attacks have a higher chance to crit. Wow. If I pick an arcane archer, I can shoot cool arrows. Wow. But generally, both of them can attack 2, 3, 4 times as they advance in their class.
Yeah.
How do we make our characters feel completely special in D&D? Something that this player, for example, has never played before. Sure, their concept could be something that's never played before. For example, my recent warlock character is a very nature-focused witch-like character, but she still feels like a warlock. She still has Eldritch Blast. She still has a few spell slots. She recovers those on a short rest. She still feels like a warlock. How would I make her more special than every other warlock? Even though that background story, that concept, that character is something I've never played. Magic items is the answer. And I think exactly that is why magic items are so vital to the fun of D&D for me. At least of D&D 5e. I'm not gonna speak about D&D 4, 3.5, 3.2e, advanced, blah, 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 because I haven't played those. But D&D 5e is only so much fun for me because with magic items, I make the game more fun than the base game it is. And if I look at this, I've had 2 monk characters in one of my games. In my Phantoms of Chaos game, I have a monk, and in my Tyranny of Dragons, I had a monk. Now, we can talk about that those 2 characters were distinctively different from one another. But what were they both? Very fast, with many attacks. And every time that monk character attacks in my recent Phantoms of Chaos game, I always think back to that first monk I had in Tyranny of Dragons that was also very fast and also hit off. Sure, the Phantoms of Chaos character is theoretically faster than the Tyranny of Dragons character and has more HP and has completely different personality to it. But at the base value of the game, they are the same.
Yeah.
And this is kind of, you could say, a problem of the class-based approach to D&D. Because if you have a class, every one of that class will have some stuff that they share, right? I'm not saying that the D&D should switch away from a class system. It has a class system, and that's okay. I'm just saying that this class system invites us to be a little bit more generous with special things, special mechanics, so they can feel different.
Exactly. Making them stand out requires a bit more outside-the-box thinking because the class system itself is pretty rigid in the things that the classes can do.
I think required is the wrong word because you don't need to do that. It just invites it.
Yeah.
The class system just invites you to think, okay, I have 2 fighters in my games. Even though one of them fights with a sword and the other with a bow and arrow, I want both of them to feel distinctly different. How do I do that? And that only happens because both of them have the same amount of attacks each round. They have second wind, they have action surge, and these features are something that they have both. So they feel baseline the same. Even though one is an arcane archer and one is a champion. Baseline, they both feel still the same. And we want both of them to feel distinct from each other. That would create a better experience for both. Even though one of them is a strength build and the other is a dex build. How do I make the strength character feel more distinct from the dex character? Well, maybe I give him a sword that allows him to, I don't know, perform cool combos or whatever, or get battlemaster maneuvers with his sword or something. Something extra. And for the archer, I give him, I don't know, range boosts, whatever, stuff like that, right? I can't think of any
shots or
weird trick shots.
You can now shoot around corners with a bow, for example.
Right, something like that.
Yeah.
But that means we add mechanics, we add complexity to both of these characters through the rewards we give them, through magic items, through feats. So they distinctly feel different from each other.
Oh, yeah.
So this is just something that I realized when we talked about this, when we suddenly talked about complexer items, right? But I think still that a +1 sword is the most baseline you can think about it because it is an advancement that the character does at some point for themselves. When their proficiency bonus levels up, they get a +1 sword. When their proficiency bonus levels up again, they get a +2 sword, right? That's kind of how you can think about it. Mathematically, nothing changes, at least from the 2-hit value. And that's why a +1 sword is kind of basic, because obviously it is basic. It's supposed to be basic. It is the baseline. It should be basic, but it sets a precedent for magic items. This is the baseline magic item you can give out. What do you do with it? Do you hand it out, or do you want your magic items to feel more special? If you want them to feel more special, you're gonna create more distinct and powerful characters. With a +1, you're just gonna give your players that extra edge.
I usually tend to the more special, more interesting magic items. And therefore, for my last campaign that I started, I created leveling magic items that they got really early on that evolved with the characters themselves. Not through a level barrier per se, but through a depending on when they do their backstory stuff, because I have multiple plot hooks for backstory stuff thrown at them. Depending on whenever they engage with them, the challenges don't change depending on their level. They are there in the way they are now. If they feel they are ready for it and they engage with it and master the challenge, their item will evolve. And therefore, I don't have to hand out new magic items every time, because I have the same magic item that just feels new or gets a new aspect every time. So there's still this thing of uncertainty, because they don't know yet what their item will be able to do in a couple of sessions, or 10 sessions, 20 sessions, or whatever. But they still have this sort of familiarity with their item, because the baseline of the item doesn't change. And I really love that.
You gave me the single best idea I've had all year, and we only
You're
have
welcome.
The 5th of January.
Let me hear it.
You have magic items that kind of level with the characters. You give the PCs, the adventurers, a +1 sword at the beginning, or a sword, their special sword. And this kind of game, I think it could be a whole campaign, revolves around them evolving their item the way they want. Basically, okay, cool. You want to level up your sword. The first level up you can do is an elemental affinity, but you choose the element.
Oh, okay.
Do you want a fire? Do you want a water? Do you want an air? Do you want an earth sword?
Oh, yeah.
And the player chooses, by doing the fire trial, gets a fire sword now, and now they can choose a different thing. Do they want their sword to shoot fire, or do they want them to ignite enemies? Skill tree weapons as a whole concept for a whole campaign.
Fuck, I have to build this now. Thank you.
See?
Oh my lord. Yeah. Oh, okay. This is amazing.
This is not just you have a sword that levels at specific instances in a way that is predetermined, or that is just you don't choose. It's you choose the way your weapon levels. This is the perfect epitome of this episode, actually, because
oh my lord, yes.
You don't choose what you give your players. Your players choose and earn their own rewards the way they want to, in the order they want, in the way they want, and it does what they want.
Oh my god, yes, I have.
This is the perfect ending, and the most sad thing is that we cannot end the episode here because it would be a little bit too short, but this is nearly the perfect ending to an episode on how to be the correct way of generous. I'm not saying that you should do this every time, because I think it's gonna be fun for one time. And after that, it's gonna feel a little bit weird, because it's a very gamey system.
Yeah.
Which direction do you go? Do you want your weapon to deal fire damage or water damage or ice damage or whatever, right? Or cold damage? Which direction do you go? It's maybe fun for 1 or 2 times, but this is probably not going to be fun for every game. But this exactly shows us what we wanted to say. You as a GM shouldn't be the only one to decide how generous you should be with magic items.
Yeah.
Your players should have a say in this. And it could be a say in this in a way that says, in the session 0, they say, I want to have fun, cool magic items a lot. I want to feel powerful. I want this to be power fantasy, and I want to have arrows that deal 500 damage as they are an anti-tank missile or something. Sure, that is a very direct way of saying I want to be powerful. You can be a little bit more different, a little bit more subtle with it. You talk with your players, and the game goes into the direction of, hey players, you've completed the challenge, you've completed a dungeon, what do you want? Right? You don't have to necessarily ask your players, what exactly do you want? But hey, I have no problem with you all taking an uncommon magic item. Take whatever you see fit for your character. I don't have to decide what they get. They decide. I just decide on a rough level, so I can still keep balance and powers in my game, so that it's still engaging and fun and challenging. But hey, I can give every one of my players an uncommon magic item and say, hey, yeah, cool, yeah, take this.
Yeah,
and they
the
take
key
it.
here again is talk with your players about this.
Yeah.
Talking is crucial in basically it's been in every episode that we've done so far. Talk to your players, because it is a communication game in the core of it. You need to communicate, and if you do it, it enhances the game so much more in a way that you cannot do without it.
I'm gonna say this. Everyone that came here to hear if they should be more generous or should be less generous, you're exactly the right amount of generous for your game. Because every time you want your players to feel more powerful, to feel more special, to get something extra, you've already given them a magic item, I assume, because that was the decision. I want my players to feel more powerful. That's why I gave them a cool ability or a cool extra feat or a cool magic item or whatever. Or I gave them enough gold to buy the stuff they want. want. You gave them enough resources, or you gave them the thing they wanted. And that you do that every time you want them to get that. And that is exactly how generous you should be. So we're not here to tell you how generous you should be or that you should be less generous. You know, my game should be gritty and brutal and dangerous. So that's why I give out not many magic items. And magic items should feel like a very big reward. And that's when I hand one out, my players are completely enamored with excitement that they finally got an item, even though it's just a regular healing potion. Perfect.
Yeah.
Or I want my players to feel like gods at level 5. I give them so many magic items that they can't even count. Is also the right approach. Because it's very easy to take away magic items, as I said before, or give more magic items even. Both of these ways it's very easy to adjust the level of generosity whenever you see fit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, especially if you play more, you will get a better feel for when you should hand out or shouldn't hand out magic items. It's the thing that comes with experience. Just basically learning by doing. No one can tell you when to do it or when not to do it. It's something that you have to figure out yourself. We are just here to give you some pointers on what to think about and what you want to achieve with giving out magic items. If it's the right time or not, that's completely on you to decide. But don't overthink this. Don't fear this decision. It's something that will come natural through play, and you will learn and you will figure out a way to feel for the vibe of the game if you need another magic item or if you don't need or whatever. It comes natural to you just by playing the fucking game.
Yeah, right. The thing is, I've handed out an artifact at level 3. I'm gonna say this. I will never do that again. However, it also hasn't completely thrown my game out of balance. So if you're here to find out how to correctly balance your PCs and hand out magic items at the right time so the game doesn't feel off balance, don't sweat that, because really it doesn't matter that much. Sure, my players have to fight maybe 1 CR or 2 CR above the usual recommended from D&D to actually have it a challenging fight.
But then throw an enemy with 1 or 2 CR more at them.
Exactly.
What's the problem? There is none.
Or just add a little bit of extra oomph to that enemy that you have your players fight. All my enemies have a little bit more HP against my players because I had my group at some point was 6 players. Because I didn't want to just add like 5-6 extra enemies, I just gave everyone like 3 to 4 more HP on the smaller enemies, and the bigger enemies got like 20 more HP. And suddenly the fight got a little bit more bad. They got 1 damage more, 1 more to hit. Easily, didn't change a thing about the balance. Just these little changes do enough so that the balance that you have because you gave out too many magic items is completely fine again.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that fucking cool if your enemies deal more damage and can soak more damage and your players can deal more damage or have more cool shit to do?
I mean, we've all had this moment when we rolled a crit and rolled maximum damage. We like big numbers. We all like big numbers.
If you want that from your game, it's easy to achieve that. And if you don't want that from your game, if you want your game to feel gritty, brutal, and hard, and the players tracking meticulously every single resource, I make this sound like it's a bad thing, but it isn't. It's just another style of play.
Exactly.
It's very easy to not fall into the trap of handing out too many magic items because you just have to say, no, I don't hand out magic items. They are hard to come by in this setting. Even if I give my players like 500 gold pieces, they can only buy new weapons and armor from that. They can't buy a magic item. Or the magic items cost like 10,000 gold pieces and my players only have 1,000. That also makes them inaccessible. It's very easy to decide how much magic items, how much powerful shit you want to have in your game, right? For example, one thing that came with the Fizzbands expansion book were these dragon gifts and dragon boons, these special feats you get when your dragon bestows upon you a gift of his or her power. It's very easy to not hand those out to players.
Exactly.
But it's also very easy to hand those out to players if you want to. And this is the same for magic items. This is the same for money. This is the same for everything. It's very easy to hand those things out. It's very easy to hand those things not out. And the only thing that really decides that is you, the dungeon master, or you, the game master. You decide what you want to hand out, how much of it you want to hand out, and how much of it is appropriate to have.
Yeah.
This is all you need to know, and you just need to make a conscious effort of thinking about this a bit. At best, at the beginning of your campaign, because then you can set everything up so it feels natural. If your whole setting is completely full of magic and wonder and mystery, and everyone has a +2 greatsword, but you never hand your players magic items, it's gonna feel weird. Same if your setting is supposed to be grim, dark, but your players run around with legendary artifacts that only the gods of the sun could use before them, it's also gonna feel weird. But if you make a conscious effort of, I want this campaign to have a lot of magic in it, so probably a lot of magic items, easy peasy, you can hand out magic items a lot, and you can settle them in and sprinkle them everywhere into your setting, because it would make sense. The players have a lot and everyone else has a lot. But that also means that the villains have a lot. And boom, balance works again. Oh my god, as if balance was never that big of a problem ever before. Yeah. If you really want balance in your game, just make a conscious effort to think about the stuff that change balance. We're gonna have an episode on balance at some point eventually, but I'm gonna hate the episode anyway, because it's such a topic that I don't need to talk about. It's so easy to not care about it and still have fun playing games.
Exactly.
Right? Really, it's so easy to be generous with magic items, with powerful shit, that just make a conscious effort of it in the moment and at the beginning of your games, and you're gonna be fine regardless. Sure, you might be here as a first-time dungeon master and you made the mistake. Don't worry, you didn't make a mistake, just embrace it. Your players have a lot of magic items, embrace that shit. Make your enemies more powerful, give your enemies magic items. Everything is gonna be fine.
If you think you broke the game in quotation marks, think about what broke it in quotation marks and then fix it, whatever.
I'm gonna go one step further than you. Break it more.
That's
you have
a lot
too
of
many
fun.
You have too many. Your players have too many magic items. You don't have to fix it by taking away some. Break it more by giving everyone else also magic items.
Yeah, I love that. Just having your big bad evil guy running around with the most imbalanced, in quotation marks, shit that you can think of, and then your party just walking in there thinking they're that powerful and blah and super confident, and he's just like sitting there on a throne, just like super completely maxed out, just flipping them off and flipping them back into the sea.
He is also that powerful.
Yeah.
Suck it. Deal with it.
Oh, you have a 3+3 plate armor? Oh, that's cute.
I have a +5.
I have a +16 greatsword. Fuck off.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So I think with that, we've talked about being generous with powerful shit, dealing with powerful shit.
And as per usual, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at DoubleDMPod. You can visit our website at www.doubledm.com. We also have a Ko-Fi if you would like to check that out. And please, if you like the show, leave us a rating on your favorite podcast listening platform of your choice. It really helps the show out. Just getting us out there, telling people about it, increasing our reach. It's just the best help that you can give. And with that, thank you for listening. See you on the next one, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Do you want to hear my bad expression? Because they use echolocation. I know where I am now.
Good job.
It's gonna be one of those. And it's totally my fault. Oh, this was a bad idea.
You think?
Oh no, the bad one was great.
It was really great.
It was a bad idea. People have told me that I'm very eloquent and informative and I present my points very well. That's only because they don't see me doing this shit.
They only hear the edited version.
Yeah.
The filtered and corrected version.
I mean, there's nothing that I need to filter out. I think the last 2 minutes have just been us trying to get it together after I made a bad impression. Oh.